I went to our board and I said, I love what we're doing at Lucid. It's a lot of fun. We've gotten global interest, but we got to do it a different way. This is there has to be a better way to do this. And they said, no, Gregg, we really want to stay focused on the IP around the turbine. And I said, okay, well, then I'm going to leave. And so I did, and I left, and I started InPipe Energy.
If you're fortunate enough to live in a place with public water systems, then you've probably enjoyed the luxury of consistent water pressure in your shower, at your sink, and your hose when you water your plants. This is because water providers go to tremendous efforts to be sure that consistency is consistent. So when water comes from high elevations or high pressure from your local water tower, sometimes that water needs to be slowed down, or else your shower head may blast through your wall or your hose will decapitate your petunias. This is accomplished in part by pressure reduction valves, which release pressure from the pipeline just enough to make sure your water is consistently delivered at a consistent pressure, which is great. But why let all that extra energy go to waste? This is the question that Gregg Semler, CEO and founder of InPipe Energy, has been asking for the past 15 years. After early entrepreneurial successes from hearing aids to fuel cells that converted alcohol into cell phone charging batteries back in the 2000s, Semler found himself in the energy business. His consistent success in raising money on Sand Hill Road, the location of Silicon Valley's famous VC and angel funds, convinced him to do the same.
Yeah, it was called Sustainability Investment Fund 2007. And so we partnered with a venture fund that had a back office. And then my partners and I went out and raised capital and then invested in companies. It was kind of a prototype venture fund. And we had about 70 investors that were really interested around sustainability. We were seeing massive deal flow and we invested in companies. And then based on that success, we raised an institutional fund called Pivotal Partners or Pivotal Investments, and basically started the first venture fund in the Northwest focused on sustainability. And so along that path, the CEO of the largest pipe company in the United States contacted me. And he said, Gregg, I see you're investing in renewable energy. I'm seeding a company in the Midwest which is developing a turbine that would go in a pipe and produce energy from it. Would you be interested in investing in it? And so I said I would take a look. And this was a company called Lucid Energy. It was in Goshen, Indiana, which is the RV capital of the world. So a lot of expertise and some engineers were working on basically a wind turbine that would go into a large diameter pipeline and produce energy from it. And they had this vision of creating like a wind farm inside of a pipe. And so Northwest Pipe, who was our seed investor, they made very wide diameter pipes, like 60 inches, 90 inches, miles and miles long. And so they saw the energy water nexus and thought, this would be a really great benefit to our customers. So So Rich, the CEO there, called me and said, well, Gregg, you obviously love building companies. Why don't you join Lucid as the CEO? We'll put in $2 million more and we'll move the company to Portland. So I left Pivotal Investments and joined Lucid as its CEO to commercialize that technology. And so I was at Lucid for 4 years. We commercialized that technology in Portland, Oregon, and in Riverside, California. We showed that we could efficiently generate energy from water pipelines. And we had global interest. We had people from all over the world coming to see us, from places like South Africa, from France, and it was just really a lot of fun, to showcase something that really people hadn't thought about before. And that's what I like doing. I like doing things that other people haven't done before. And so, it's challenging, but it's also a lot of fun. And so my team and I, we're very proud of our accomplishments at Lucid and this opportunity that we were pursuing.
And so you're at Lucid for 4 years. You raise money, you're getting global interest, but then you leave. But it sounds like you decided, hey, think we could be doing this better. And whether it's the board or the higher powers that be said, we don't want to do it your way. This is the direction we're going. And you left. I'm curious about this break in terms of what you can tell me, because you leave Lucid, and then with your own money, you hire an engineering firm and you design the system that you think they should be doing. You split apart and you say, I know where this needs to go, and I'm going to prove it. What would cause you to leave a CEO position and risk your money and your career to go do this instead?
Well, as an entrepreneur, it's all about talking to customers, and there's no one who's talked to more customers about the energy water nexus than me. I spent 4 years at Lucid trying to understand how we could commercialize this turbine that was so cool and just fit perfectly in this pipeline and so forth. And so I understood all the objections that operators and engineers could have to adopting this technology. And we did have two successes in Riverside and Portland with very enthusiastic, supportive customers that loved what we were doing. But at the same time, I saw how complicated and how difficult it is for people in water utilities to innovate and adopt new technology. And so I experienced that firsthand. And so I went to our board and I said, I love what we're doing at Lucid. It's a lot of fun. We've gotten global interest, but we got to do it a different way, because this is the there has to be a better way to do this. And I think this is how we should do it. And they said, no, Greg, we really want to stay focused on the IP around the turbine. And I said, okay, well, then I'm going to leave. And so I did, and I left and I started InPipe Energy. And I basically had this idea of creating a standardized energy recovery system that de-risked everything I heard from our customers during my time at Lucid. And when I took it to the guy in Riverside, he said, thank God. So one of the major innovations was, don't put it in the pipe, put it in a bypass, right? Because at that time, Lucid might have been successful if there were new pipelines being built, but it's very difficult to get somebody to stop the water, open the pipe, put something in it, and then close it back up, right? And so we developed a system at InPipe where they don't have to do that. In fact, they don't even have to turn the water off to integrate the energy recovery system into their operation. So when I took it to the operating director at Riverside, he said, Greg, thank God you finally listened to me after 4 or 5 years. I told you this is what you need to do. So it was quite fun. And again, at InPipe, we had the support of the Portland Water Bureau and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and different water utilities to really help, get us off the ground.
And that's interesting. Lucid seemed much more concerned about the technology and the intellectual property, and you were more focused on, well, how do we make this as easy as possible to purchase, right? You
Yeah.
flipped that. And I'm curious, how does your wife feel about this? You leaving this job and using all your money to start this venture? I mean, you've clearly done this before and you're successful at it. Was she worried? Were there concerns that, you're giving this engineering team a lot of money to build this new thing, and now you're going to go try to sell it? What was her reaction?
Well, she was supportive. At the time, she was very supportive. I think it's very difficult to be an entrepreneur. And it's very difficult to be the spouse of an entrepreneur as well. And that's because, we go through a lot of emotional ups and downs, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and they compile on each other. And the thing about emotional stuff is it passes, but it doesn't always pass for your spouse. So if you go home upset, depressed, angry, whatever, sad, that sticks with them. Like, that's how they remember you when you went to bed. You were very upset or you couldn't sleep that night. But, me, I can hardly wait to get up in the morning and get back to work and start, fighting again. And so eventually my marriage did take its toll. And I just think my ex-wife at the time just wanted to get off the roller coaster, which I can totally understand. But at the same time, it's really hard for me to help myself because I just love sort of the entrepreneurial, problem solving, real time feedback kind of life. It's tough on a spouse.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And so you leave this position, you go for it, and it looks like InPipe started in 2016 and you get your first sale in 2018. What are those first 2 years like? Is it mostly doing what you do best, going after VC money? Is it knocking on doors and trying to acquire it? I imagine waiting 2 years to get your first sale is difficult. I guess tell me about those first 2 years from starting to your first sale.
Yeah. So I knew what we were doing made a lot of sense and had a lot of confidence about it. The market wasn't quite as convinced. And I couldn't believe that it took that 2 years to to kind of get to our first sale. I couldn't believe that we actually had to build a working prototype and demonstrate that the system worked and that it was safe and reliable. I couldn't believe we had to get a white paper published and written. All of these steps, honestly, I just thought people would see it as for what it is, a very de-risked way to generate energy and reduce operating costs, for water intensive industries. But we did have to go through a process. We worked with Isle Utilities a lot. They were pivotal. I was part of Imagine H2O in those days. So I had a lot of support to go through the early stage entrepreneurial journey. Yeah, it still confounds me why it takes so long to innovate in the space. And I have a lot of ideas about that, but it just does, right? And I think, it's the challenge of water is that it's difficult. It's a very difficult buyer. It's a very difficult procurement process. It's regulated. It takes a while. But what was so amazing is, so we did all this work early in the early days. We worked with Oregon State University. We got a white paper written. And I went to Hillsborough Water, which is a suburb of Portland where I was living. And I presented what we were going to do. And you know what they said? We'll buy it. That was my reaction too. It's like, are you kidding me? I couldn't believe it. By that time, I was focused on all these other processes and
Hmm.
risk mitigation things that they throw at you. And they said, no, we get it. We're focused on sustainability. We need to get our energy costs under control. What you're doing makes a lot of sense. And they had like a 27-year engineer from HDR. He was Serbian. He turned my team upside down and right side up. And we learned so much during that first install, which took about 3 years from the time they said they would do it to the time it actually got installed. It took about 3 years. The challenges didn't stop.
I wanted to get into that because yeah, the waiting continued, and so
Yeah,
they say we'll buy it, and obviously you're rearing to go. You'd put it in that day if they'd let you.
totally, totally.
it
Yeah,
it sounds like there were a number of setbacks between. So as you said, it took 3 years, but everything that happened in those 3 years. So getting the energy utility on board sounds like it was a process. The champion who said we'll buy it is let go from the utility, and then a new general manager comes in, and then you have to essentially resell it. And they even threaten to cancel the project after I don't know how far along you had gotten, but there was even risk of it being essentially taken away from you. Yeah, what happened in those three
yeah,
years?
yeah. Well, there was a lot of turnover. And with a new general manager, of course, they came in to try to reduce costs and to get people focused. And we were on the chopping block. And I had to meet with him several times to plead with him to keep it going, which ultimately we did prevail because he retired. They brought in somebody else who I had convinced, but she was great and she was really supportive and excited about the idea. There were some regulatory issues. So we all know water's highly regulated. It can be very political, and it didn't have to do with us. We were asking the state for permission to generate energy from the water pipeline. And they said to Hillsborough, well, at first you have to fix this, which was about $30 million that they owed the state for something where they were out of compliance at a completely different location. And we probably lost 9 to 12 months with them in the back room negotiating with the state on a compliance issue. So things like that. And, for us, it was we were just 5 or 6 guys working at WeWork, dependent on this sale every month, trying to convince our investors to just keep us going. So it was just that went on for like 2 or 3 years until we were able to finally, break ground. And this was after we'd already identified the site, identified the parts, hired contractors. It was all ready to go, but it still took, 2 or 3 years.
On top of the first two leading up to it, right?
Right,
And so,
exactly.
I mean, and obviously you didn't expect this because you were sold on the technology when you started InPipe, and you're obviously very excited about the potential. But I mean, gosh, 5 years to your first sale, you're incredibly patient, and it's apparently convincing to get people to continue to fund you guys and keep you going. And I assume you're also looking at other opportunities. You're not only stuck on Hillsborough, but I'm curious, you've done so much to de-risk it. What are the risks around this that these utilities feel? Why was everyone so slow? Where was the pushback as you work with all these utilities despite your best efforts?
Yeah. Well, so to your point, yes, we were constantly talking to water utilities about what we were doing. And so during that 2 or 3 years, that's what we did. I mean, we weren't sitting around. We were super busy. We were doing lots of different things. And we were raising capital, we were hiring people, we were, building systems, we were talking, there's work to be done in a startup all the time. So as sad as it got sometimes over the Hillsborough project, we were really busy, building a sales funnel. So I think that the thing that, well, first of all, water utilities are very mission driven. The most important, our go-to-market strategy focused on water utilities because that's where my background and so it made sense to me that what we were doing was something that had great value for them. Because while most people think that what InPipe is doing is developing a turbine, and that's because of what I did previously, like at Lucid, but really I see it as a valve. So the water industry is made up of pipes, pumps, and valves. We weren't a pump, we weren't a pipe, so I wanted to be a valve. And for our customers, managing flow and pressure and delivering water at the right pressure safely, reliably, cleanly, that's all that matters. They live for the customer experience. If you're not happy with the pressure in your factory or in your shower, that's upsetting to them. They respond to that, right? Or if the water's brown and it's supposed to be clear, they respond to that. That's what they're in business to do. And if you come with innovation that has to do with energy or reducing costs, it's secondary. They're not experts in energy. They're experts in water and water delivery. And so where we run into that issue, that they're not experts in energy, we run into the issue that they don't have huge staffs of people and there's lots of turnover. They're not really organized for innovation. So the energy market, in contrast to the water market, there's a lot of innovation happening in energy. We all know solar, wind, nuclear, geothermal, electric vehicles, batteries, it goes on and on. Lots of innovation. Electric utilities are dealing with innovation all the time, trying to pick what innovation they need to make their delivery of electricity more reliable. That's not the same in water. In water, it's about making sure the pipes aren't leaking, making sure people aren't getting sick from the water, making sure there aren't chemicals in the water, that they're impacting habitats. They're basically dealing with aging infrastructure, and they're just keeping it going because they don't have the capital resources that you see in energy. So a lot of water utilities understand the nexus of energy and water, that energy can be as much as 40% of their budget, that it's the second highest cost next to people, but they can't always falls off the table when it comes to priorities. And so they have these long-term plans, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, very capital intensive. And if you're not in their plan, you're not going to have success. So at InPipe, you have to figure out how to accelerate the deployment, even if you're not in the plan. And, that's a numbers game. And, even though it took us a long time to get Hillsborough up and running, it's the most important thing we ever did, because having a system up and running, having customers that are happy, operators that'll talk about it, leads to more success. And so for all the entrepreneurs out there, that's basically what I instruct, be customer oriented. It's all about the customer and getting a system up and running so that other potential customers can talk to them. And that's the I know for really growing.
Fast forwarding to today, you guys now have 5 active installations: Colorado, California, I believe, Oregon, and now most recently in Thailand, all the way in Asia. And going into 2026, it sounds like you have 4 more contracts that are in the works and being put in. Your patience has paid off and the company's growing. And now that you had your Hillsborough, people are buying in and they're seeing the value. I guess, is there anything happening with the Hydra? Are you guys innovating the technology in a certain way, or how are you continuing to change your business model to continue to make it attractive as you pick up momentum?
Yeah, several ways. So we have 5 systems up and running. We have contracts for delivery of 4 more this year. And so our goal has always been to get 10 systems up and running. So we have 9 systems. We'll have 9 by the end of the year. We've proven that we have no technology risk, which is a huge milestone, that we've been operating this portfolio of systems in Oregon, Washington, California, and Colorado. We have repeat customers, and we just shipped a system over to Thailand that you mentioned, and it arrived on Friday, and it's going to be installed in the next 6 weeks at a very large industrial water company, the biggest system that we've done. And we have about 10 systems behind that for Bangkok once this one is installed. So things are really starting to take off for us because people are becoming much more aware of the benefits of hydropower. So one of the things that happened recently is the Trump administration started phasing out solar and wind projects and electric vehicles. And so people have started to look for innovation around hydropower. And I think I've counted maybe 5 companies on the planet that innovate in hydropower, and we're one of them. So the opportunity for us is enormous and huge. And now that we've proven we have no technology risk, we're finding that people in mining, the mining industry, agriculture, data centers, existing hydropower facilities are very interested in using the hydro excess. So it's very exciting. We have a number of innovations that we're doing. We just received our 3rd patent, which is on maximizing the energy potential from flows in pipelines. We developed a technology called variable speed. So our turbine changes speeds based on flow of the water, which is unique to turbines and shows that we can produce about 60% more power than an average turbine. So that's huge. And then we're also innovating in a technology that we think is ideally suited for data centers who need massive amounts of energy. It's more of a storage capability. So there's a lot of interest in the world in a technology called pumped hydro storage. It's the lowest cost source of energy, but it's massively capital intensive and environmentally challenging. So not very many of those projects come along, but because they use a lot of capital, there's a lot of interest in it. So we, on the other hand, kind of look the other way. How do we bring products to market that provide solutions for our customers that could be faster to market? And so we have some innovation that we're working on there that we'll probably announce next year.
You got ahead of me. My next question was going to be, no, and it's good. You guys started in water utilities because that's what you knew, and it's notoriously slow, but now you're going into these other sectors that are much faster moving. That it's good. It's interesting to see. I mean, because pressurized pipe is everywhere. It's far bigger than drinking water, and so yeah, the applications that you're seeing seem to be exploding, and the interest in faster moving and more moneyed industries seems to be expanding. And so, with that, my final question is, what's the future of Hydro Access and InPipe?
Well, what it has always been our vision is to be able to use pipelines to deliver water, but also to generate energy. And what you're seeing in the world is huge demand, unprecedented demand for energy. And it's either going to be fossil fuel based or it's going to be carbon free. And what InPipe is doing is basically taking advantage of the millions of miles of infrastructure that exists that could be used for generating a very predictable, reliable, low-cost source of energy that has no environmental impact. So what we're hoping to now is to find partners who really want to help us scale in their industries, in their countries, to deploy this technology, really to help people energize their economies and their factories and so forth. So it's a very exciting time. I think finally, the winds are at our back, we hope. And yeah, we just keep innovating. And luckily, we have an amazing team of people who really understand the importance of the connection between energy and water and how our technology impacts the delivery of water, because that's the most important thing. Water is the most important resource on the planet, but energy is really closely related to it. And so we need to make sure that we're not impacting the delivery, but we're also making the delivery more efficient and bringing more capital to water that we can do through energy sales. And so, we're really excited about what we're doing.
And then, I have one more question. What about you, Greg? Is this the last company you're going to build and you're finally going to go into retirement? Or, say InPipe got bought out today, would you just make another energy company? Would you just keep going?
Well, I'm a water guy, so I love water. And, hopefully some of my skills are transferable. We were recently selected to be part of Imagine H2O, and it's been a lot of fun to work with younger entrepreneurs and kind of share my experience, my sense of urgency with them. And hopefully we can make water better. And that's what we're all here to do.
Water is power.
Water is power.
Water has been so slow to adopt new tech. But as climate change happens and costs rise, innovation around drinking water is reaching a trigger point. Simple ideas like Semler's seem like a no-brainer for anyone with pressurized pipelines to recoup the energy you're already spending on. Energy constitutes a massive budget line for water and wastewater plants, as well as industries. So any chance to capture that wasted energy and reuse it makes sense from an environmental and a financial standpoint. Hopefully, industry and water begin to see what an easy win things like this are for them. Well, that's it for me this time. We'll see you next time on The Meter.